My name is Sophie, 29, and for as long as I can remember, I've worn two labels: broke, worthless. At least, that's what my family says. What they don't know? While they laughed at my poor lifestyle, I was quietly paying for theirs. The mortgage they brag about, my direct deposit. The car they flex on social media, my signature. The utility bills that never get cut off, all me. I let them talk, let them sneer, swallowed every insult, because I thought it was easier to be the silent backbone. But this morning, I opened my laptop, realized something. The only reason they see me as worthless? I've been too scared to show them how much power I have. So I drafted one email, screenshots, transactions, a CC list long enough to make them sweat, scheduled to send at 9 a.m. tomorrow, right before my sister's dinner party, the one where I knew they'd make jokes about my recession chic dress. Perfect timing. If you've ever been called broke by the people you're secretly supporting, this is for you. The first line I typed was simple. Here is a list of everything you've ever called yours that was actually paid for by me. No drama, no insults, just that. Then I started listing. Mortgage payments, date, amount, confirmation number, line after line, month after month, highlighted in yellow. Under each one, I added where the money came from. Paid from my checking account ending in 4,283. The house they posted online with the caption, "Hard work pays off." My hard work. Then came the car. The sleek SUV my sister loved to photograph from every angle. I scrolled back through my banking app, found the first transfer, the down payment. I remembered that day at the dealership so vividly. I was 23, sitting on cheap fake leather, in a blazer that didn't quite fit. My mother and sister charmed the salesman. Every time he mentioned the co-borrower, they waved their hands. "Oh, she's just here to help with paperwork." Just paperwork, I repeated to myself, like a mantra. But when the monthly payment started overdrafting my account, no one called it just paperwork anymore. I screenshot those payments too. For each image, I wrote one short sentence. You drove this. I paid for this. It felt cold. It also felt true. With every item I added, a memory attached itself. I was 20, working my first office job, taking the bus because I couldn't afford a car yet. My phone buzzed one afternoon. Text from Mom. "Call me, emergency." When I stepped into the hallway, she was already crying. "They're going to take the house, Sophie. We're 3 months behind. I don't know what to do." I remember sliding down the wall, heart pounding. I had a tiny emergency fund, built from saying no to coffee runs, splitting meals with friends, pretending I wasn't hungry when I was. I wired everything I had that same day. No questions, no judgment, no lecture. I told myself, it's fine, I'm young, I'll rebuild. She posted a family picture in front of the house a week later. Caption, "Grateful for our blessings." I wasn't mentioned. The bank transfer wasn't either. That was the first time I realized something. My sacrifices weren't just invisible, they were convenient to forget. As I kept typing, the list grew ugly in its honesty. Utilities, electricity, gas, water. Every time they bragged about never letting the lights go out. It was because I'd quietly stepped in before the shutoff notice turned into a truck outside their house. I added the receipts from the times I'd woken up to frantic calls. Sophie, the power company made a mistake. We're about to get cut off. Can you just cover it this once? Just this once. Repeated so many times it turned into background noise. Then the medical bills. Those hurt most. Not just the money, the emotional blackmail attached. You know I'd do it for you, Mom would say. Difference was, she'd say it. I'd actually do it. I attached confirmation emails from hospitals. Under each one, I added, covered in full by me so no collections would call you. I wasn't trying to humiliate them. I was documenting a history they had erased. Between attachments, I caught myself hovering over the delete key. Was I being petty? Overreacting? Blowing things out of proportion? Then I remembered sitting at a family dinner when I was 25, exhausted from working overtime to catch up on my own rent, because I'd bailed them out again. My mother lifted her glass, joked. We all know Sophie's not good with money. She's always too broke for nice things. Everyone laughed. I laughed too, but my stomach twisted so hard I couldn't finish my food. No one at that table knew I'd paid their late fees the week before. No one asked why I was too broke. I was just the joke. So I scrolled back to the top of the email, added another line. You've spent years calling me irresponsible without ever asking where the money you needed came from. I decided to structure the email like an invoice, not because they owed me the money back. I'd already accepted I was never seeing it again, but because I wanted them to understand the scale of what they'd taken for granted. I grouped things into sections: housing, transportation, emergencies, lifestyle. Under lifestyle, I listed the credit card payments I'd made when they accidentally maxed out cards on vacations and dinners they couldn't afford. I remembered one Christmas, my sister posted a photo haul of her presents. Caption: when your family spoils you because you're worth it. What the photo didn't show? Me sitting at my kitchen table, staring at my own bank account in the red, because I'd paid off the card they used for just a few last-minute gifts. I put those payments in the email too. Underneath, I wrote, you said you deserve to be spoiled. This is what it cost me. At one point, I stopped typing, just stared at the glowing screen. The document was long now, pages of proof, numbers, receipts that didn't care about feelings or excuses. My hands were shaking, not from anger, from clarity. I realized how long I'd been telling myself a story that kept me stuck. They don't understand, but they love me. No, they understood perfectly. They just didn't care. I drafted the subject line, everything you call yours that I actually paid for. Then I added everyone to the CC list. Mom, Dad, my sister, my aunt, 2 uncles, the cousin who always had something to say about my poor choices. I scheduled it to send at 9 a.m. tomorrow, right before my sister's dinner party. The one I'd been invited to. The one where I knew they'd make jokes about my recession chic dress and my homemade dessert. Perfect timing. I sat back, looked at the small confirmation on the screen. Email scheduled. Then I closed the laptop, got ready for dinner. My hands moved on autopilot, picking out the same simple black dress I'd worn before. Clean, neat, comfortable, nothing flashy. Last time I wore it, my mother laughed, called it recession chic in front of everyone. I remember pretending to laugh along, while silently doing mental math about how much I had left after covering one of her emergencies that week. I slipped the dress on anyway. I was done dressing for their approval. On the way to my sister's place, I watched the city go by through the bus window. Cafes setting up, couples heading out, lights flickering on in apartment windows. Somewhere in that same city, my money was sitting quietly in houses and cars that didn't have my name on them, propping up a life I was never allowed to fully belong to. I got off a stop earlier than usual, just to breathe before I walked into the performance. When I reached her building, I could hear music before I even stepped out of the elevator. Laughter, clinking glasses, the kind of noise that says, "Everything is perfect here, don't look too closely." I knocked. The door flew open. "Sophie, you're actually on time," my sister said, smiling wide, air kissing my cheek. "Miracles do happen." She took the dessert box from my hands, glanced down at it. "Homemade again," she said, raising an eyebrow, making sure people nearby could hear. "Still can't afford catering." A couple of people laughed, not loudly, but enough. My mother appeared behind her, glass of wine in hand, eyes already bright with that sharp energy she got whenever there was an audience. "There you are," she said. Quick hug that felt more like posing for a picture than affection. "We were just saying we hoped you wouldn't cancel last minute because your bank account had a panic attack." More laughter around us. A few sympathetic looks that did nothing to soften the sting. I walked past them into the dining room. It was exactly what I expected. Table from the photo, fully set. Candles, heavy cutlery. Plates that looked like they'd never seen a dishwasher. Bottles of wine lined up on the sideboard. Labels turned outward on purpose. Little touches everywhere to say, "We're doing well. We're not like those people who struggle." I took my seat near the middle, close enough to be part of conversations, far enough from the head where my mother liked to sit and steer everything. As people settled, phones came out. Photos were snapped. I watched one cousin angle her camera carefully, capture the table and my sister's outfit, but not the fact that she was behind on payments for the car parked outside. For a moment, I felt the old familiar urge to shrink, to make myself small and quiet and agreeable so the night would pass without damage. Then I remembered the email waiting on the server, set to send itself in less than 12 hours. I remembered the subject line, the receipts, the total. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel powerless in that room. They could still laugh. They could still take their shots, but the clock was ticking, and none of them knew it. I let myself smile just a little as my mother raised her glass for the first toast. Tonight they saw the same Sophie they always thought they understood. Tomorrow morning when they opened their inbox, they would finally meet the version of me they'd been living off without ever acknowledging. The one who knew exactly what she was worth, down to the last cent. Dinner was exactly what I expected. Soft music, nice plates, my sister's apartment dressed up like a showroom. Everyone talked about work wins, trips, new things they'd bought. My mom sat at the head of the table, glass of wine, telling stories about how she'd always kept this family together, how she was the one who made sure nothing ever fell apart. People nodded, laughed, topped off her glass. I sat in the middle, the quiet one in a plain black dress, thinking about the email waiting in my outbox, scheduled for 9 tomorrow morning, full of proof that the story they loved telling wasn't the whole truth. For a while, I did what I always do, faded into the background. My sister bragged about her spa membership, a trip she wanted to take, to recharge. An aunt complimented the apartment, the car parked downstairs. Nobody mentioned late notices. Nobody mentioned calls from the bank. Nobody mentioned the nights they'd called me because something was about to be cut off. To them, I was still the Sophie who didn't travel, who wore the same clothes more than once, who always said she was watching her budget. That version of me made sense to them, made their own choices look better. The first hit came exactly when I knew it would. My mom set her fork down, looked straight at me. "So, Sophie," she said, stretching my name, "how is life in that little apartment? Still pretending you like living like that? Or are you finally ready to admit you just can't keep up?" A few people laughed. My sister smiled, waiting to join in. I took a breath, put my fork down, met my mom's eyes. Normally, I would have shrugged, made a joke, moved on. Tonight, I stayed quiet for a beat, then spoke. "My life is fine. My rent is paid. My lights stay on. My fridge has food. I'm okay." My mom gave a small, disbelieving laugh. "Oh, come on. Every time we invite you somewhere, you say you're broke. You bring homemade food instead of just sending money. You never join us on trips. At some point, you have to admit you're struggling. That's not a crime." My sister jumped in. "Exactly. You work constantly, but what do you have to show for it? No vacations, no upgrades, nothing fun. That's not a strategy. That's just being broke." Broke. They loved that word when it came to me. They said it lightly, but it landed heavy every time. It used to cut right through me. Tonight, after building that email and seeing my life in numbers, it just sounded lazy. "You really think I'm broke?" I asked. My mom shook her head, still smiling. "Sophie, you're almost 30 and still living like a student. You always talk about how tight things are. We're not attacking you. We worry about you." "You could worry less and ask more," I said. "None of you ever ask why I say no. You just decide I'm failing." My sister rolled her eyes. "Here we go, the mystery speech. If you're struggling, just say it. Don't try to make us feel bad because you made bad decisions." I looked at the necklace around her neck, the one I remembered from a bill I'd helped pay. I looked at the car keys on the table, attached to the car I'd co-signed for. My throat tightened. Not choking on shame this time, just on everything I could have said. "I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad," I said. "I'm asking you to think. How do you think so many things in this family have stayed afloat?" The table went quiet. My uncle stopped mid-sentence. An aunt set her glass down. My mom's smile faded. "What are you trying to say?" she asked. "That we can't handle our own lives? That we're using you? We're family. Families lean on each other. You're acting like you're some kind of hero." "Leaning on each other means both sides get support," I replied. "Has that ever really been true for me?" No one answered. The silence sat between us, heavier than any joke they'd thrown at me. My sister finally spoke. "So we've needed help sometimes. Who hasn't? That doesn't mean you get to act like we owe you everything." "You don't owe me everything," I said. "You owe me respect. You owe me not turning me into a story about how broke I am, while I'm the one making sure certain bills get paid and certain things don't get taken away." The word bills changed something in my mom's face before she forced another laugh. "Listen to yourself. What bills? You make it sound like we're drowning. We always find a way. You find a way, I answered, because someone has been catching you every time you fall. My voice was even. My heart was pounding hard enough to feel it in my hands. After that, nobody slipped fully back into the easy rhythm they loved. People tried to change the subject. Jokes landed, but not quite right. I caught a cousin looking at me, like he was replaying old moments in his head. My mom went back to her stories, but her eyes flicked toward me more often, as if trying to measure how far I was willing to go. When I stood to clear plates, my mom followed me into the kitchen. Away from the table, her voice dropped. "Whatever you're planning," she said, "don't forget who raised you, who took you in, who gave you everything you have." I set the dishes down, turned. "You gave me a home. I'll always be grateful for that. But you didn't give me everything. I've given you a lot too, more than you've ever admitted." Her jaw clenched. "You're playing a dangerous game, Sophie. Don't make a mistake you can't fix." I walked past her, back toward the hall. "I already did," I said. "I let this go on for years." Later, when I stepped outside, the air felt colder than when I arrived. On the sidewalk, my phone buzzed. Notification from the family group chat. A photo appeared. Everyone around the table, arms linked, smiling, glasses raised. Caption: "Family over everything." I stared at my own face on the edge of the frame, half turned away. They still believed that. They still believed the joke was on me. Tomorrow morning, when they woke up and saw my name in their inbox, they were finally going to learn what family over everything had really meant. One person paying the price, while everybody else laughed. The next day, my phone started buzzing at 9:05 a.m. I was at a coffee shop, laptop open, working on a presentation for a client. First call, Mom. I let it ring. Second call, Mom again. Third call, my sister. Then the texts started flooding in. Mom, call me right now. Sister, what the hell did you send? Aunt, is this real? Did you really pay all of this? Uncle, we need to talk about this email. I sipped my coffee, watched the messages pile up, didn't answer a single one. Around noon, my sister called from a different number. I picked up. Sophie? Her voice was shaking. Angry or scared, I couldn't tell. People are asking questions, asking if we've been taking advantage of you, asking why we let you struggle while we lived well. This is humiliating. Humiliating, I repeated. Interesting word choice. You sent that to everyone. Cousins, aunts, uncles. Do you know what you've done? I sent them the truth, I said, with receipts. If that's humiliating, maybe the problem isn't the email. She hung up. An hour later, my mom called. When I answered, she was crying. How could you do this to us? Make us look like monsters. We're your family. You made yourselves look like this, I said calmly. I just showed people the bills. We didn't know it was this much, she said, voice breaking. We didn't realize. We thought you were fine. You thought I was fine because you never asked. You just took, Long pause. "What do you want from us?" she finally asked. "An apology? Money back? What?" I thought about that, realized I didn't want anything anymore. "I want you to stop calling me broke," I said. "I want you to stop making me the punchline. I want you to understand that I'm not your safety net anymore. I'm done." "You can't be done. We're family." "Then start treating me like it." I hung up. Over the next few weeks, things shifted. The jokes stopped, at least the public ones. Some family members reached out privately, said they had no idea, said they were sorry. Others got defensive, said I was making a big deal out of nothing, that family helps family. I blocked the defensive ones, kept boundaries with the others. My sister eventually apologized, sort of. "I'm sorry you felt used," not, "I'm sorry we used you," but close enough for now. My mom took longer, but one day she sent a text. "I'm sorry for the times I made you feel small. I didn't see what you were doing for us. I see it now." It wasn't perfect, but it was something. I didn't go back to being their ATM. I didn't go back to being the joke. I built a different relationship, one with boundaries, where I said no when I needed to, where I wasn't afraid of being called selfish for protecting my own life. Months later, I sat in my own apartment, the one I could finally afford to furnish properly because I wasn't covering everyone else's emergencies. I thought about that email, the one that changed everything. And I realized revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just the truth. Sent at 9 a.m. with receipts. Sometimes it's taking back your power, one spreadsheet at a time. Sometimes it's realizing that being called broke by people you're supporting isn't an insult. It's a confession. They needed you to look weak so they could avoid looking dependent. The moment you showed them the numbers, the story fell apart. And that's the real power. Not the money you gave, but the truth you finally told.